Those in the know are calling it Ohio's Chernobyl, or the new 9/11, as the toxic fallout from the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, continues to spread across the US, contaminating the air and water. Dead fish are turning up in the area and other animals are dying after shady government officials arrived to inexplicably set fire to derailed train cars that contained uncured vinyl chloride, which is one of the most toxic substances known to man. Local residents are furious with the government for contaminating the air and water and attempting to cover up the event by downplaying the situation. This is a major ecological disaster happening in real time right now, affecting real people, and the disconnect from the Biden administration is very telling. We have to warn you, there is some very strong language in this video from a local man in Darlington, Pennsylvania, 7 miles from East Palestine, who is understandably furious with the people responsible for the fallout.
These aren't storm clouds. This is the shit that they burn off, the fucking shit they burn off in East Palestine. This is not storm clouds. Look at it! This is over Darlington. You ready? I'm ready. Let's get out of here. I wish we could get the out of here. Mother. You greedy mother. Impatient bitches. You could have waited. You could have cooled the tanks. You could have transferred the contents. You didn't have to do this. You did it because of time and money. That's exactly why you did it.
Ashley Munoz, who grew up in the area and whose parents still live nearby, provided this disturbing report about what's really happening on the ground. According to Ashley, there is a massive cover-up happening right now.
So with all this stuff going on in East Palestine, Ohio, with the Norfolk Southern train derailment, I grew up about 20 minutes from there in a small town called Latonia, and my parents still live up there. And I just talked to my mom, and she said that the river's contaminated up there. Livestock have been dying. They are evacuating some cows and other livestock to different areas of Ohio. That they were at Walmart a couple days ago and they came outside and their cars were covered in almost like this tarry sawdust kind of thing. And she went for a walk recently outside, and her friend both felt really sick and short of breath. And basically the EPA and everybody went in and the railroad told them to get out. So there seems like there's a cover up there. They're telling everybody on the local news that it's okay, but it's not okay. People are getting sick, animals are dying, things are tainted, and there's a cover-up going on.
More and more local residents are coming to the conclusion that this was an intentional act. According to Sil Caggiano, a hazmat expert who doesn't mince his words, the US government nuked East Palestine.
We now know 3 more chemicals that were on board the Norfolk Southern train that derailed here in East Palestine just over a week ago. And we're being told that some of those chemicals are dangerous.
We basically nuked a town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open.
According to the locals, the way the officials handled the scene after the derailment simply beggars belief. Only 1 train car was leaking, yet the officials used small explosives to blow holes in the other tankers that contained PV so it would leak out and so they could set it on fire. They did this apparently without making any effort to remove the other less volatile, but also highly toxic chemicals from the area first. It sounds too crazy to be true, but that's what they did. And the officials and mainstream media are engaging in a criminal cover-up of the truth.
Of the cars that crashed, 5 of them contained vinyl chloride. It's a monomer used to make PVC. The reporting on this has gotten vinyl chloride confused with polyvinyl chloride, the polymer made out of vinyl chloride. Now, the reason that this distinction is really important is vinyl chloride is very hazardous and very flammable. Polyvinyl chloride is a plastic that's used in like everything. The other thing about vinyl chloride is that it boils at 8 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's shipped in its liquid form. Meaning that when these trains crashed and these started leaking, they weren't just leaking liquid, but they were spewing boiling gas. So vinyl chloride is really toxic. OSHA has the permissible limit of how much you can be exposed to it during an 8-hour shift as a 1 ppm part per million, average over 8 hours. So prior to this, the biggest spill of this chemical was in New Jersey, where 1 train car and about 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride were spilled but it didn't catch on fire. Now, this crash in Ohio has 5 train cars. These kinds of tanker cars can carry between 25 and 33,000 gallons. Let's call it 250 to 250,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. That's per train car, 5 train cars. There's maybe 1 million pounds of this toxic chemical spilling into the ground and also boiling off into the air. But then it caught on fire. I think this is where the reporting is really bad because no one is mentioning what the byproduct of vinyl chloride burning is. Of the many byproducts of burning vinyl chloride, one of them is hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride is really unstable and latches onto water, like just water vapor in the atmosphere, and that turns into hydrochloric acid. So right now, government officials from the railroad, both the governor of Pennsylvania and Ohio are calling burning off the 1 million pounds of this stuff a success, but not mentioning that it means that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of acid in the air, potentially. Now, ever since engineering school, I've studied a lot of industrial accidents. I just find it really fascinating, and organizations like the Chemical Safety Board, NTSB, and OSHA all have like really good reports available to the public. I think as a designer, it's really good to learn about mistakes. When looking at these kinds of industrial disasters across time, there are a couple things that are pretty universal across all of them. One, the responsible party, in this case, Norfolk Southern Railway, always plays down the reality of the situation. Politicians also just repeat the same lines, and then news outlets just repeat the same. So all we're hearing is the responsible party's word.
And it's not just the people in the immediate vicinity who are affected. The derailment and toxic airborne event has taken place in a very strategic location in order to affect tens of millions of people. The Ohio River, which serves over 10% of the US population, has reportedly become contaminated due to chemicals from the train derailment. The river supplies drinking water to over 5 million people, in addition to industries all the way to West Virginia, affecting over 30 million people who live in the Ohio River basin. But it gets even worse. A Hollywood movie about a train derailment in Ohio was filmed in the same location where the actual derailment occurred. And many of the extras in the movie were locals from East Palestine, Ohio. Many of these locals were involved in filming scenes involving evacuations from the area. Fast forward a few months and they are evacuating from the area in real life. Local news is trying to claim that this is simply life imitating art. But seriously, what are the odds of this happening? Given that we know the global elite like to mock us, is this another example of predictive programming?
We also have the story tonight of an East Palestine man who was in a recent movie that was eerily similar to the train derailment that happened.
First News reporter Abigail Cloutier spoke with him about the uncanny similarities.
When Ben Ratner signed up to be an extra on White Noise, a movie that was about a train accident that caused a chemical leak, he never thought it would become his reality. Ratner is an extra in a traffic jam scene sitting in a line of cars trying to evacuate. The movie follows a family after a train hits a tanker truck, creating a chemical cloud. White Noise came out in 2022 and was shot around Ohio. Ratner is an extra in a shoot in Salem.
My dad and I went, and they had us basically in cars evacuating.
The plot of the movie is not lost on the East Palestine community.
Because there's only so much negative you can focus on. People are like, oh, how about this, it's kind of uncanny here, this movie.
Ratner tells me he tried watching White Noise again soon after the derailment.
Probably like 15 minutes in, I turned it off. It was not something that I was ready to watch yet.
The night of the fire, Ratner and his family were watching his kids' basketball game, and they weren't sure what was wrong at first. They live in what was the 1-mile evacuation zone, and it became clear they needed to get out.
Loaded up the kids and the dog and a little bit of clothes we had from mother-in-law's house and went and stayed in Salem.
He waited for a few days after the evacuation order to bring his wife, kids, and dog back. He says he worries about the effects of the disaster on East Palestine. His family does not want to move, but they worry about health concerns and property value.
You see your home as an investment for the future, and if the railroad took that investment from us, there needs to be that consideration.
Considering the astronomical odds of life imitating art in this way, and given the fact that we know the global elite like to mock us, an expression immediately comes to mind: revelation of the method. Originating from the ancient Rosicrucian texts, this concept refers to the process of exposing people to dark realities, often in a veiled and underhanded manner to gain implied acceptance from the masses. Once these hidden truths are quietly and deceitfully revealed to the public and met with general apathy and indifference, they become normalized and embedded in society's collective unconscious. Take, for example, the huge number of references to 9/11 in films, TV shows, and video games years before the attacks actually happened. Examples include The Simpsons, Back to the Future, and more. Some occultists compare this normalization process to the alchemical great work, where the world is transmuted according to the will of the occult elite. In his book Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, Michael Hoffman explained why the elite like to rub our faces in it. The alchemical principle of the revelation of the method has as its chief component a clown-like grinning mockery of the victims, as a show of power and macabre arrogance. When this is performed in a veiled manner, accompanied by certain occult signs and symbolic words, and elicits no meaningful response of opposition or resistance from the targets, it is one of the most efficacious techniques of psychological warfare and mind rape. Since the advent of mass media, the revelation of the method has become increasingly obvious. While in the past the elite operated in complete secrecy, it now seeks to operate in plain sight. The Ohio train derailment and subsequent cover-up fits perfectly into the revelation of the method concept. And now we are expected to believe that train derailments are normal. Emergency officials are currently responding to 2 more train derailments, one in South Carolina and the other near Houston, Texas, which was transporting 16 carriages of hazardous materials. Please share this video with anyone you think could benefit from the information, and if you're in the vicinity of the derailment, please follow hazmat expert Sil Caggiano's advice and go see a doctor right away.
Surprised that when they quickly told the people they can go back home, but then said if they feel like they want their homes tested, they can have them tested. I would have far rather they did all the testing.
Caggiano says it's possible some of these chemicals could still be present in homes and on objects until you clean them thoroughly.
So there's a lot of what ifs, and we're going to be looking at this thing 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line and wondering, gee, cancer clusters could pop up, well water could go bad.
Caggiano recommends anyone who's in the East Palestine area get a health checkup. He says get a record now of where your health stands so that moving forward you'll have documentation of any possibly related effects to the train derailment.
Here at The People's Voice, we are determined to keep bringing you the information the mainstream media and government officials want to cover up. If you want to support our work, please subscribe to this channel and feel free to join the People's Voice Locals community and help us expose the dark agenda of the global elite. The link is in the description box below this video.